Hi everyone, welcome to our tutorial day on Facebook Fun for Some Odd Girl. I'm really excited to share with you this card that I made using the adorable Some Odd Girl stamp and this sentiment that matches. I'm not going to show you the whole set because I really want you to come back on Monday when we have the release to see the adorable new sets that are going to be released for May. They're all clear stamps. And I want to talk to you about how I'm going to paper piece the tail of this little girl and also use some Copics to make some highlights in the paper piecing. But also I want to teach you how to paper piece so that your image looks really good after you're done. Sometimes paper piecing can be very difficult. To start though, I'm going to start coloring this image for you. And I'm going to be using a number of Copics, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to go over the colors with you. They're not going to be in line with the colors I'm using at the time. But I started with an E000 and I'm going to go in with an E00 now to start my shading. I'll also be using an E11 and an E13 to add some great dark shadows into her facial features. I also like to use a BV23 for some of the darkest portions of the shading. You'll see me add that at the end. And then I'm going to start coloring the sea stars that make up her little bathing suit on the top. And I'm going to be using a YR12, a YR15, a YR18, and in the end, and I don't show this on the video, I added this at the end because I thought it needed a little bit more contrast, so I added an R29 as well. For her hair, I'm actually debating whether I really like her hair or not at this point. I did an E51, an E53, an E55, and a touch of E57. And then I decided I wanted to add a little bit of blue because she's underwater, so I wanted her hair to kind of have an underwater appearance to it. So I went ahead and added a B12, a B14, and a B18 as well. And it does definitely look like it's an underwater kind of murky hair color. But in the future, I might not use the same hair color combination again. I might try something a little bit different. So anyhow, I used those colors. Oh, in addition, I used an R20 and an R22 for her lips and her cheeks as well. Once I'm finished with the coloring portion, and I will go ahead and show you a little bit more about the paper piecing that I did and how I went about making a very clean paper piece for this image. So now we're going to have a few minutes of silence here while I go ahead and finish up coloring this image, and I'll be back as soon as I'm done. Okay, so as I was saying, you can line up the pattern on the paper with however you want the image to be, and you can actually see it right through the stamp, so you know what's going to look good. Now, when I stamped it, I stamped the scales at a little bit of an angle because I thought that would look best. And you only need to ink up the portion of the stamp that you need to use too, which is also nice because you waste less paper. That's all the paper that I actually used. I'm also going to be using these other sheets of paper, this orange basil cardstock, another piece from the Bo Bunny set, and then this pretty blue piece of paper here. Let's see, this pretty blue piece of paper here to make a card. But the really important thing is I really wanted to show you how to paper piece in such a way that you have a really clean image. You have really clean lines, and your paper piecing looks really nice. So I used Memento ink to stamp her, and then I also used Memento ink to stamp out the tail on the paper like I showed you, and then I simply cut it out with a pair of Cutter Bee scissors, which are these nice little scissors here. They do a great job of really cutting nicely. And then for the inside here, I used a blade, a straight edge. So now that I have this, and this is what I did. I kind of cut out the orange part of the fin or the tail here because I like the contrast. But what I wanted to talk to you about is, one, sometimes when you paper piece and you cut out your images, let me see if I can zoom in here so you can see this. Sometimes what happens to your black lines is you lose them a little bit. You'll notice around here, and that's because when you cut them out, you know, it's really hard to cut out a perfect image. So what I like to do is I have this Copic multi-liner pen. This is a 0.5. I like this size. And what I like to do is go around the edges like this and just kind of make sure that everything's nice and black on the edges, so that when I go to put it on there, you don't see the color of the paper. Because if you see the color of the paper on the edge, it kind of takes away from the effect of a really clean paper pieced image. So I just kind of go all the way around like this. If you don't have a Copic multi-liner, you can use the Memento ink itself. And the reason I like to use either the Memento ink or the marker is because I'm going to also talk to you a little bit about how you can use your Copics to shade this image to make it look more real. I don't know if you know you can do that, but you can actually use your Copics on paper piecing to bring out some depth and texture to your picture, especially the paper piece picture. So once I get this outlined, I'm also going to be outlining the tail that I showed you, and also the back of the fin with my multi-liner. I'm not going to sit here and do that for you. As you know, it's going to take a little bit of time to really make, to really make this look nice. But once I do that, I will come back and show you how I'm going to take my markers to shade these simple little items, the tail, the fin, and this, so that you can get more of a three-dimensional effect on the mermaid. So I'll be right back. Okay, so now I'm back and I've got my image cut out. I used my Cutter Bee scissors again to cut the entire image. I've gone ahead and placed the paper piece portion of the image on with a little bit of glue. And as you can see, there's some dark outlines on the edges now, so you can really tell the distinct features of the mermaid's tail. I've also added a few highlights to her eyes and the little sea stars for her swimsuit. And now I want to add some shading to the image to really bring it to life. You can take your markers and add depth to your your images on paper piecing as well. And I'd like to do that with some Copic markers now. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be using the YR12, the YR14, no, YR12, YR15, and YR18, as well as a little bit of R29 here. So I'm going to start with my lightest color. One thing that's always good to do, though, before you use your Copic markers on paper other than your blending cardstock like your Express It, is to test it. So I'm going to start with the orange portion. So I'm going to grab some of this orange paper here and just put a little bit of test down. And the way I do that is I set my marker down on the paper and I want to see how fast it bleeds out. If it's going to bleed out very fast, then I want to be really careful when I start to use it on the image, because I don't want it to just kind of sit down and kind of bloom out really fast. I don't want that. I want it to work a lot like my blending cardstock, and if it's not going to happen, I want to know that. So now I'm going to go ahead and take this YR12 and go ahead and blend it in to the tail in areas that I want to be a little bit shaded. So I'm going to start at the bottom. I imagine my light source from the top, and so I'm just going to naturally add a little bit of a shadowy portion to the tail down here. And I imagine the back portion of the fin here being nice and dark. And I'm going to do this around the tail and then also on portions of the fin. Again, just working in quick flicking motion so that I can blend my next color in. And I don't want to use the whole marker to color the whole piece of paper, because I'm just adding some depth to it without kind of overwhelming the whole piece. Then I'm going to go ahead and start at the fin and add a little bit, close to the back portion of her, because I imagine the fin kind of tucking down into her tail. And once I'm finished with that, I'm going to go ahead and pick up my YR15 and add a little bit darker of a shade here to the bottom portion of the tail. Again, I'm just flicking, doing, little short flicks to make sure it's going to blend well, because when you don't use blending cardstock, you're never really sure how well it's going to blend. And I'm adding, and this is adding depth to the whole image, just like her face and her hair. Once I'm finished with the YR15, I'm going to go ahead and pick up a YR18 and go in again and kind of follow the same lines as I did. And you can see already that it's really starting to add some depth to this image. Actually, this is the R29 I think I'm using now. A lot of people don't use the R's with the YRs, or maybe you've never tried it before yourself. I highly suggest it. It's one of my favorite color combinations to take a red and highlight oranges with it, because it really does make it look like a deep, deep orange color. And it's a great combination for an image like this. So now that I'm kind of finished with the tail and the fin, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the actual, I guess, body and tail portion of her. And I'm going to start with a YR12. I'm just going to kind of blend in. I don't want to overwhelm the pattern on the paper, because if I add a little bit too much, then it will become very overwhelmed. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this in the same order as I started before, starting with the YR12. I'm going to work my way up for the YR15, the YR19, and I don't think I will be adding any red to this portion, as it might be a bit too dark. I think the darkest I'll go for the tail is a YR18. And then when I'm finished, that'll be the end of it, and I can go ahead and put my card together. So that's a very simple tutorial for you today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a little bit more about paper piecing and what you can do to add some more depth and dimension to your paper piecing. Come back in a little bit and we'll have another tutorial for you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.